And right around 2018, which is when the amount of solar really took off, well, look at that. So did our electricity prices. What a coincidence.
That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even work out in your little analysis. No, okay? So solar, there's no correlation, there's no evidence.
Every year for about 30 years in order to supply the raw materials.
I don't understand how they can make these sort of claims with no supporting fact.
I don't care how badly you think the government is screwing you over on energy prices. It is way, way worse than whatever you think it is, and I'll prove it. Because the cost of electricity that you see in your bills is only the beginning. And it's proof, if any more were needed, that net zero should be called niet zero, because it is an unaffordable fantasy that should be abandoned as soon as possible. But while we're talking about our electricity bills, remember when Albanese said your energy bills were going to get cheaper? Well, Pepperidge Farm remembers, and that certainly feels like that promise was made a very long time ago, and I don't know about you, but my bill hasn't gotten cheaper yet. But I have some good news for you. If you're already rich enough to be ready and willing to drop, let's say, $7,000 or more on a house battery, then the government, then taxpayers will chip in the rest, about $3,000, to get you into a brand spanking new household solar battery so that you, rich person, can save money on your energy bills. Sure is good to be rich, right? This scheme was launched less than a month ago, and already there's been more than 11,000 installations, each applying for as much as $13,000. As relatively wealthy Australians are yet again paid by the government to screw over taxpayers and other energy users who aren't rich enough to jump on this scheme.
Now, like with the battery stuff, I'm pretty sure a lot of it, the incentive, like obviously if you can afford the battery, you can afford the battery, but if you can't, then you this doesn't really help you to an extent. But in the long run, it kind of is, because in a way, if everyone gets the batteries, then it adds more capacity, like battery capacity, to the overall network. He's probably not going to touch on that at all either.
And I say yet again because this is an exact repeat of the rooftop solar program that got us into this mess in the first place, with taxpayer-funded handouts of up to $8,000 back then. And just like that old rooftop solar program, this new battery program helps people who have money to spare and promises the rest of us that we'll get cheaper electricity. But what it gives us in reality, well, it gives us what it's already given us. This Australian solar battery scheme is the very definition of what Harry Brown was talking about when he said that the government is good at one thing. It knows how to break your legs, hand you a crutch and say, see, if it weren't for the government, you wouldn't be able to walk. The fact is that these solar batteries are just a very expensive crutch that the Albanese government is using to prop up the electricity grid, the grid which they broke in the first place. We paid for them to break our grid, and now we're all going to pay again for the crutch to keep.
And I can't help if he's, because obviously Albo didn't do it single-handedly. I don't know if he's just talking about the government in general, or if he's talking about Labor Party, or if he's talking about Liberal Party, like coalition or anything like that.
Keep it hobbling along. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to make sense of the nonsense that surrounds us. I am 100% viewer supported, so please head over to topherfield.net and buy me a coffee via the button that looks like this one. And if you like my videos, then you are going to love my books, starting with Good People Break Bad Laws, which, by the way, has a 4.8-star rating on Amazon, with no reviews lower than 3 stars and lots of 5-star ratings. And you'll find both of my books on Amazon, but it's better if you head over to goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com, because there you'll not only find my books, but you'll also find my multi-award-winning DVD and my t-shirts, including now, by the way, long-sleeve t-shirts, just launched the other day, and hoodies and a range of different designs, and I really appreciate your support. Australia are world leaders in rooftop solar with more than 3.5 million installations Australia-wide, and we're supposed to all agree that that's a good thing. But the pricing data, well, that tells a slightly different story. See, globally, the trend is very clear. The more you add so-called renewables, wind and solar, the higher your retail electricity prices become. And yes, there is a wide spread between countries because every country has a very different mix of energy supplies. Some are rich in...
Hang on, did he just say that the more renewables, the higher your retail prices?
Spread between countries because every country has a very different mix of energy supplies. Some are rich in hydropower, for example, while others might have a lot of baseload power coming from coal, which is cheap and helps to keep their prices lower even as they add more wind and solar on top.
Okay, if he's going to go down the talking point that coal is cheaper than renewables, this is going to get interesting.
But the fact is, if you keep adding more wind and solar, the result is inevitable. Those prices will go up. The data is clear. Now check out that cluster of countries in the bottom left of your screen. 10 cents per kilowatt hour or below, all with less than 5% wind and solar. Now, Australia's not actually shown on this graph in its present position, but if we were, with our 29% wind and solar and our 33 cents to the kilowatt hour nominal energy price, we'd be right there, which is exactly on trend. It's exactly where you would expect us to be, given our absurd devotion to expensive and unreliable wind and solar power. But it wasn't always like this. This graph from the Australian Energy Regulator shows the nominal energy price or electricity price in each state in Australia. And yeah, sure, it bounces around like a frog in a sock. But even so, the uptick in the trend from about 2010, about halfway through that graph, onwards, is absolutely unmistakable. So what happened around 2010? Well, you'll be shocked to learn, absolutely flabbergasted at the sheer coincidence of it, that 2010 is right when the amount of solar in Australia began to take off. And right around 2018, which is when the amount of solar really took off, well, look at that. So did our electricity prices. What a coincidence. Now, I know correlation...
Hang on a sec. So from 2010, so he's going to pinpoint around here, he's saying that the introduction of solar, because of this graph here, because solar's gone up, then this is a reason why this has gone up. But we didn't have solar here, so why did this go up? Like, there is no way that you can argue that this correlation here, it goes up and then goes down. So how can you, if you're going to say that solar has a one-to-one relationship, a proportional relationship to the electricity prices, then this graph here should also be a linear, or like, well, it's not linear, but like it should also go up in the same fashion. But it doesn't. It goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. And it goes up and it goes down. So there is a lot more at play here than just solar coming into the mix. That is a gross conclusion from that. And I betcha there is actually so much more going on here. But let's see what he says.
It doesn't always mean causation. But come on, really? You're going to argue with that? So there you go. So he is making a gross assumption or a gross correlation between these two figures without even looking at into this. What he's actually missing is, from for the starters here, if there was heaps of solar came in, then why did energy prices go down? What helped it go down? What from 2014 all the way to 2018, 19, why did that increase? And I'll tell you why it increases is because there was a huge issue with, was it the gold plating? The gold plating was basically like energy companies were building, like getting all transformers and transmission lines, and they were able to pass all those costs onto the consumers. And the ACCC came in and found it out and basically capped them. So they were able to buy all of this infrastructure and then pass those, and make billions of dollars, and then pass those costs onto the consumer for the next 40 years. And then I think it was during the Turnbull government, then they came in, ACCC found out, and then they brought in a policy to basically stop them, and then the energy prices came back down. And then what happened here? That's when the Ukraine and Russia war started, and then gas and oil prices and all that went up as well. Oh, there's a huge correlation there. This here happened globally, and it was also COVID. So like this price here was all due to the fact of that war, and COVID has nothing to do with solar. But then you're gonna make this huge correlation here. That is just absolutely ridiculous, and there is no facts to support that. And I bet you for the rest of this video, he's going to say that this correlation here is solar means more expensive electricity. Always mean causation. But come on, really? You're going to argue with that? So this is the problem, which Anthony Albanese is now trying to solve. The rooftop solar program was so successful that it broke our electricity grid at great expense to us all, driving up our energy prices and making the grid less stable, not more. And that's not just according to me either. It is a well-established fact that in order for a grid to function, you have to pretty well balance the input of energy to the consumption of energy. And that's fine when you're using baseload power where you control the inputs. But what if the clouds are controlling the inputs? Well, if that's the case, then you risk moments of grid overload like what happened here back in September last year. Now, these sorts of events are becoming more and more common and are set to become more and more of a problem as the percentage of solar continues to go up. So another way to look at this.
No, that is completely false. The reason why we had all those blackouts and stuff like that in like 2022 and then last year, and that was because of weather-driven events and stuff. It had nothing to do with like the amount of solar that's in there. Like, but there's like heaps of reports that basically say, you know, why there was huge increases in wholesale prices due to coal power plants going out. It's everywhere like this. So we've got the Reserve Bank of Australia. Here's a really good example of in 2022. Here, wholesale electricity prices have increased sharply over the past 6 months. This is 2022. Here, around 60% electricity generation in the national energy market stems from coal-fired power. As such, disruption in several large coal power plants over the recent months has put pressure on the supply of electricity. So this is why there was a huge increase in electricity prices, was due to large coal power plants going down. So like his talking point here around blackouts occur because of solar. No, it's because the power plants are so old and they're outdated. That's the reason why they're trying to move towards a different alternative as well. So it's just
graph is that the share of solar as it goes higher, not only do prices go higher with it, but so do blackouts and grid instability. Right. So that...
No. Okay. So solar, there's no correlation. There's no evidence that solar has a proportional relationship with wholesale energy prices. And there is no data that supports that because of all the solar on people's roofs, that's why we're experiencing blackouts. That's just not true.
It's the broken legs.
And he's not even going to show any actual evidence of any of that. So what evidence have you got there?
What's the crutch? Well, the crutch that the government is now offering us at our own expense, I will hasten to point out, is batteries. Lots and lots of batteries. Now, if we ignore economics, and we ignore the cost of living, and we ignore the environment, then batteries are a great way to stabilize the grid, because they soak up excess solar power during the day and they supply it back to the grid overnight. Perfect. The trouble is that here in the real world, economics and the cost of living and the environment all exist. They actually matter. Now, I've talked at length about the absolute environmental...
Yeah, okay. So if you're going to say all that, let's see what he's got to say here.
Vandalism that is the green energy revolution. The sheer scale of the mining operations, let alone the refining, the toxic waste that needs to be dealt with, the transporting and manufacturing needed for grid-scale battery backup, plus, of course, all the electric vehicle batteries that we're apparently going to need as well. It is just insane. Estimates vary, but we would have to do something like the total amount of mining ever done in human history. We would have to repeat that amount of mining every year for about 30 years in order to supply the raw materials for the green energy, environmentally friendly revolution. That's what they call environmentalism these days. And let's remember that batteries do not produce a single solitary...
And so that is a huge claim. It's gonna go up 30-fold or whatever. However much he said. He reckons it's gonna like do that for every year up until 2050. If you're gonna make a claim like that, put some sort of evidence forward, okay? Because you can go into the Bloomberg's transition metal outlook. And this basically goes into how much metals are going to be required for the transition of this energy market. Okay, and it goes into absolutely everything. So this is where you want to go if you want to see how many metric tons of metals, and metals from like, what we got aluminium, cobalt, copper, lithium, manganese, nickel, silver, steel, like all these, and basically what the demand is for then. Here you can see the electrolyzers, EVs, power grids, energy storage, blah, blah, blah. And it goes into all of it. And what you end up finding is that if we were to move towards what's called here economic transition scenario, which is basically if a country just wants to, like if we just want to go towards what's the cheapest solution and have no sort of, like if we don't go a net zero target, then it's called the ETS. And the net zero scenario is if we're going to look for as little emissions as possible to try and hit net zero. And it concludes, here it is, like that the world will require 3 billion metric tons metals across from 2024 to 2050, and it doubles. It goes to 6 billion tons if we go to net zero. So the amount that he is saying that we need to do every single year for 25 years or whatever, that's just not true. And like you can see here that there's no supporting evidence of that. He's just put a big picture of a mine there, and that's it. Like I would recommend, if you are actually seriously concerned about this, then you go to Bloomberg's. Like I don't understand how they can make these sort of claims with no supporting facts.
Needed for grid-scale battery backup, plus, of course, all operations, let alone the refining and the environment, all exist. They actually matter. Now, I've talked at length about the absolute environmental vandalism that is the green energy revolution. The sheer scale of the mining operations, let alone the refining, the toxic waste that needs to be dealt with, the transporting and manufacturing needed for grid-scale battery backup, plus, of course, all the electric vehicle batteries that we're apparently going to need as well. It is just insane. Estimates vary, but we would have to do something like the total amount of mining ever done in human history. We would have to repeat that amount of mining every year for about 30 years in order to supply the raw materials for the green energy, environmentally friendly revolution. That's what they call environmentalism these days. And let's remember that batteries do not produce a single solitary kilowatt hour of power. They don't add any new energy into the grid whatsoever. So all that mining and environmental damage is being done just so that we can control when the solar power goes to the grid. It doesn't increase the supply. It's literally the crutch designed to prop up the electricity grid that the government broke with too much rooftop solar. And once...
That's just so... I don't get it. But if you have this supply of power during the day from solar, and then you have a mechanism to store that power such that you can use that power for free if it's your own battery during the nighttime, then you're averaging out the amount of solar power through a 24-hour period. I don't understand how that concept is so hard to gather. And
again, we are the ones paying for it. Now, typically a house-scale battery will cost about $1,000 per kilowatt hour installed.
That's not true either, but yeah, fair enough. If you're on the ends where you cannot afford a battery, okay, if you cannot afford a battery, you cannot afford solar, let's just say that you are in that pool, then yeah, a lot of this is probably going to resonate with you because you're probably like, I can't afford to get solar installed, I can't afford to get batteries installed. You're doing all this stuff, why don't you do anything for me? But you got to remember that when you have an area that has a lot of batteries and solar, it's called a virtual power plant. So when people get batteries, they can sign up for a virtual power plant, which means that when their battery fills up, they can then sell that money back onto the grid, and that can be used by other people when they're using electricity from the grid. So if more people have these batteries, then as a network, there's more battery storage, and then that energy that is stored in those batteries is cheaper than what you're paying for on a coal-only grid. So with everyone else having batteries, your electricity prices should come down, and that is exactly what the government is trying to tell you. Not only the government, you've got the ACCC, you've got the AER, you've got AEMC, you've got the CSIRO, all these players that are saying the way that we are going is the most cost-effective solution, and it is the most cost-effective solution. The CSIRO say that in their Gen Cost reports. The AEMO says that in their reports. The everything is pointing towards that solution, and you can't just counter it by just trying to make these really bad logical analysis with no evidence, because anything that he's saying here, he hasn't got anything to back it up. The only thing he's brought up is those two graphs, which are just so it's not even close to what he's trying to sell. So I I'm just saying, like, you can comment below and tell me what you think about where we are up to at the moment. But so far, I actually haven't seen any reference to any actual evidence of what he's trying to say.
For systems of 10 to 20 kilowatt hours. The government, or rather you and I as taxpayers, we are stumping up 30% of the cost on all new systems up to 50 kilowatt hours, with no cap on the number of installations which we are funding under this program.
That's okay. So yes, okay, I agree that if you can afford the batteries, then you get 30% off with the new battery scheme, and that is coming out of the federal budget. Okay, yep, he's right there. Like, if you can't afford the battery, then other people are paying for it, and then they're getting 30% subsidy. Well, then, you know, that is coming out of taxpayers' money at the end of the day. But also, just don't forget that those people who buy the batteries are then collectively, they are going to help bring the prices down by increasing the amount of battery storage is in that area. Because when it comes to battery storage, they're not just going to build massive batteries in the middle of bloody nowhere. You can have these batteries stored everywhere, and they all network together. That is what they're trying to do. So they're trying to get people to buy batteries everywhere. Okay, that's what the incentive is. When he says no cap, there is a cap. I'm pretty sure it's only like a $2.3 billion amount of subsidies are allowed. So already he's got that point wrong. And when you get these simple point wrongs, it just says that you're trying to spread a certain narrative. And if anyone listening to this goes, oh, there's no cap on it, there is a cap on it. It's 2.3 billion. Unless the government revisits it and say, like, let's just say it goes for 5 years. But like once that amount of subsidy is over, like, it's done.
All adds up to a heck of a lot of money. Where's that money coming from? Well, it's coming from general taxation revenue. They are specifically making sure that it doesn't go on to the cost of electricity. They are burying those costs elsewhere. Now, why does that matter? Well, it matters because it allows them to produce deceptive propaganda like the Residential Electricity Price Trends 2024 report from the Australian Energy Market Commission. It's a fascinating report, if only because it shows so much about how to lie with statistics. Let's start with this little gem on page 25 to get a bit of context. This graph shows the amount of new generation capacity being built each year. So think of each of these bars as being added on top of the existing grid year by year. Now, most of that new capacity is wind and solar because, well, we're not really building anything else right now, are we? And that orange bit in the middle, that's the past 7 years up until 2024. That green section where the bars get much, much bigger, that's 2025 onwards. That's the
So this is the report that he's so the AEMC.
That's 2025 onwards. That's the future, out to 2034. In other words, what they're saying with this graph is that the amount of wind and solar that we've already built is nothing compared to what we're about to build in the next 10 years. And keep in mind what's happened to
So this is the page he's talking about here. So already, I feel like he did not explain that how it actually is, because this graph outlines the actions that could lead to lower household electricity and energy costs and ensure an equitable energy transition for customers. Now, this is going to take in everything, not just solar and wind. Our central case, which projects a decline in electricity prices, assumes that generation enters the system at levels set out in the AEMO's 24 ISP. So the ISP is the integrated system plan, right? So this is that covers like all your transmission lines and basically how the network's going to integrate together. So a central case projects the decline in electricity assumes the generation enters the system at levels set out. Okay, so already it's got to follow what it says in the ISP. Okay, and in the ISP it's got certain set of dates and stuff like that and what we have to install. Okay, scenario analysis shows that delays to this schedule could put upwards pressures on prices. The wind delay scenario highlights that per unit prices could increase if generation assets are not built in time. So when we talk about this is important because if people keep going on with this narrative about renewable energies being the most expensive form of electricity and that we should stick with coal and gas and all this sort of stuff, it is going to put delays onto the AEMO's ISP. Okay, and then those delays is going to put upward pressure on prices. So this is why it's very important that type of narrative is silenced. I get that sometimes you need people to speak up on it, but it's getting so much traction now that investors are going to start pulling out, that are investing into these projects. You've got everything that's going on, like the rural areas. If that puts delays in like transmission lines and stuff, that's going to put pressure on prices and all of that sort of stuff. The ISP step change scenario requires an average annualized growth rate and installed in the next decade, which approximately, okay. Previous AMC analysis has shown that while investment pipeline remains healthy, the rate at which announced projects move to the commissioning stages is low and could pose a threat to future reliability of the system. Removing barriers to entry and minimizing the taste it takes to connect the new supply to the grid. So this is where your policies and regulations are going to come in, are important to ensure that generation assets are built when they are needed. Recent rule changes, accurate grid connections for renewable energy projects to ensure transmission line finance, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so the way that he's reading this graph, it isn't what the graph is designed to basically prove. And he's kind of like twisting what it is saying to fit his narrative. And I don't like that. It's not accurate. I could see here he's going to bring back up this graph, and he's going to, I bet you he's going to say that because we're going to get more solar, more renewables, that graph is going to continue to go up, when it's just not true, because when you actually look at this report, you can actually see further down that residential electricity prices are meant to come down. So, yeah, whatever.
Prices while we installed the solar that we've installed so far. That increase in electricity costs was caused by just the orange part in the middle of this graph. What do you think will happen to prices as we build way, way more?
See, already, like with what he just said then, he said that middle part caused all of this, when that doesn't even correlate properly, because look at all of this. Oh, it's only an average annualized growth rate of 1.6 from 2010 to 2017. So you're saying that this little bit here caused all of this, and then you're saying that this caused all of that. That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even work out in your little analysis. So
by just the orange part in the middle of this graph. What do you think will happen to prices as we build way, way more? Build way, way faster in the green section of this.
Again, here you have the Ukraine-Russia war. Okay. Here, oh no, you can't explain why that dip's there, but that's a good dip. Okay, but then you're saying this big bit here is because of solar, yet you have no recollection of what happened when those companies basically completely stole money from taxpayers and completely just turned up wholesale prices by just increasing the amount of transmission lines, the transformers, and all that, and basically pass those costs on to consumers. And then they were found out by the ACCC, and then Turnbull came in, and was it Turnbull and Morrison came in and basically put in new regulations to basically reduce that cap. And then that's why there was this dip here. But there's no explanation of basically what went on there. And that was a good finding by the ACCC, and it was a good move from ScoMo and Turnbull to basically do that, and that you can see that right there. But like that should be spoken about more, if anything, rather than trying to make this correlation between solar and wholesale prices. Like, it's just insane.
While we installed the solar that we've installed so far. That increase in electricity costs was caused by just the orange part in the middle of this graph. What do you think will happen to prices as we build way, way more? Build way, way faster in the green section of this graph? Well, according to the same report, prices over the next 10 years are going to go down. Yep, according to them, prices will be flat to slightly falling over the next 10 years, even though we will be adding record amounts of solar.
I think from that, I'm pretty sure from that same, so here you've got electrification savings. So this sort of highlight bit here, so as time goes on, this is what the line would be, the prices would be if we don't do anything, and then this is what they're actually going to dip. This is the amount of savings that we're going to be doing. So like, that's good, right? You've got actual data. He's even showing it. You've got actual data that's been done, that's been heavily invested into, and you're turning it on its head.
Faster than ever before, and we'll be building all the batteries that we so desperately need to smooth out the solar supply so that the grid doesn't collapse because of all the money that we've already spent on solar. It's amazing. The prices are
So I can see what he is trying to put, like the picture that he's trying to paint here. He's saying that because we introduced all this solar, it has had an upturn in energy price, and now they're trying to do all the battery savings and like basically trying to flatten it out and make all those savings because they fucked up with solar. But the ultimate thing is that if we didn't do a solar in the first place, then we wouldn't have this problem, which is complete bollocks, because we showed it on the National Bank of Australia website before, and there's also reports from the AEMO and all of that the huge turn in prices for wholesale prices for electricity is all due to coal and gas prices. It is so volatile depending on that. When the Ukraine and Russia war broke out, that's when the wholesale prices went to the highest, because it had a huge impact on oil and gas trade and stuff like that. And like the blackouts were due to coal plant power stations going down. That had a huge impact. So basically there was no coal electricity, so it switched to gas, and gas was a more expensive form. So like this sort of talking point is just even close here. So this is the CSIRO reports 2023-2024. So it's a collaboration between the CSIRO and AEMO to deliver annual progress reports updating the cost of electricity. So even if you go into here, right, when you look at the price of what they've done for electricity generation, it is evident here that you've got coal and gas, right? So this is a flexible load, so depending on if it's high or low load, whatever, but they've categorized as high emission, so emitting the most amount of CO2. They've got the prices here, okay? And the prices are in dollar format per megawatt hour, right? And then you got the variable and your variable renewable energies down here. Like this is the analysis that they've done. So that's solar PV, solar panels. Here's what you get for solar and renewables, and here 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%. And here you've got all your coal and gas. And it's just evident that it's more. So every time that and this isn't just a random report. This is done by the CSIRO, and in Australia's national side, this is real research gone into all of these prices and all these projections. It is just so evident that it is cheaper for the consumer. And don't forget that the market retail price doesn't make up 100% of the cost. It only makes up a portion of the cost. But it does make up a good portion of it. And it just baffles me that none of that analysis is ever done when it comes to these talking points. And I've done these videos for a while now, a couple of weeks, but every single one of them have exactly the same talking point, and they're not showing any of the data. And that's why I'm starting to record it down, just because it's just ridiculous how like they can not provide any substantial data and just show these funky graphs when this graph is even supporting what I'm saying. It's just...
And it go down. Actually, it isn't amazing. It's unbelievable. And I mean that
there
literally.
You go.
It is unbelievable that given the strong correlation historically between renewable energy increasing and prices increasing, with Australia being right on trend, exactly where you would expect us to be, that somehow magically that's all going to change. And in the next 10 years, we're going to massively increase our solar and wind production and build battery backups for the whole grid, and yet somehow our electricity prices will go down and not up. Yeah, I don't believe that claim for a second, but there is a handy explainer page about the Cheaper Home Batteries program from the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, or as its mates like to call it, the DCCEEW for short. Catchy. And they state in their website, point blank, that the program is funded by the government to ensure no extra costs are passed on to consumers. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying that these costs, they won't show up on your power bill. They show up in your taxes. They show up on the national debt. Because let's not forget that nothing is government funded. It's all taxpayer funded. And that's how they get away with this. That's how they're going to spend all of this money and keep your power bills lower. Now, I don't actually believe for a second that our power bills will actually get any lower. I think they'll continue going up. But it's a fact that they are shifting the costs of your power onto general revenue in a cynical attempt to try and make our power bills...
See, like everything he's saying there is just... Oh, all right, I think I'm almost done. But it's... The way that he is phrasing this, and you might not be aware of what he's doing here, is he's giving you two outcomes, right? It's either going to... Electricity bills are going to keep going up, and it's going to be because of the solar renewable energy graph that he pointed out, and in relation to the cost going up. All right, let's just say that prices do keep going up. Not going to say why, but they do keep on going up. He's going to use, this is why he is right. Okay, but then if energy prices do go down, he is also going to be right in saying, but it's also passed on to, it's just coming out of government tax subsidies and stuff like that. So, like, no matter what, he's going to be
right.
Lower. So it's just...
So what they're doing with this battery program is not just providing a crutch to prop up the grid that they broke with their rooftop solar program. Yeah. It's not just throwing vast amounts of good money after the bad money that they've already wasted. It's also designed to hide the true cost of the green energy revolution and these solar batteries.
Yeah, so if prices do go down, then those prices are really, they're just funneled into a different avenue. So you're still paying for it. So, like, no matter what, you're buggered at the end of the day, and there's no way that he can be wrong in any
paying
outcome.
For it all through general revenues so that you don't see it in your power bills.
Yeah. So
which means that your power bill, as bad as it is, it's not even close to being the full story. There's money being spent, money being wasted on the net zero fantasy that you don't even see until it shows up in your taxes or it shows up on the national debt. All you know is that you're getting taxed out the wazoo and you ain't getting much in return. Now, I'm pleased that at long last this net zero madness is being questioned by the Nationals and even some of the state Liberal parties, and it seems like maybe the momentum is shifting on this. But a huge amount of damage has already been done and is being done right this moment. The fact is that this battery subsidy is economically illiterate and pure environmental vandalism, all so that they can make our electricity prices even more expensive whilst further driving up solar as a percentage of our grid, which is going to mean that even with loads of batteries, we're still going to face stability issues and we'll be paying more than ever before.
Okay, all right, Moses. But at the end of the day, there was no evidence put forward there to support anything that he was saying. Nothing added up. There was no, like, the references to that report. He even read that wrong. There's no correlation between solar increasing and therefore wholesale prices increase. There was no evidence or even analysis done of those dips in what he did give. There was just absolutely nothing. So when you come out with, like, going against net zero, I just think that when you've got all these reports from the AEMO, CSIRO, you got the Australian energy regulators coming out, like you got the International Energy Agency, you've got all these big, the IGCC, you've got all these people investing in it, and then this is the sort of stuff that you're using to support going against net zero, which they've even claimed in the AEMO report that delays to the transition is going to have upwards pressure on electricity prices. So if you delay all these projects, it's going to have an effect on electricity prices. Like that's just the fact. But there's never any talking around that. It's just this whole very strong anti-renewable, like I don't even know where to begin, because it's in the CSIRO report, the Gen Cost report that I just brought up before, that renewables is the cheaper option, and that's the data. And then you're listening to the narrative and you're comparing it to the data, and it just doesn't stack up. So then it's just this very, very strong hyperbolic, very biased opinions. And I've seen what the nationalists are saying and all that as well. And they're doing the exact same thing. It's same on Institute of Public Affairs. Everything Pauline Hanson's going on about, Barnaby Joyce. There still just isn't, here's a report that we've done, and this is how it all stacks up. But there's no investigation into it. So I think if you're gonna go down this pathway, I feel like there needs to be a bit more. That's my take. So if you think I'm wrong, or if you think Topher's wrong, or you think that there's a bit of grey area in between, then share it in the comments below, because I do read those comments and I do like replying to them. I'm always open to anyone's opinion. So please share your thoughts below, and let's get into the next one. Hi, if this is your first time to my channel and you are enjoying my videos, please drop a like and subscribe, and it will help my channel grow.